Geek Insider presents Geeky, Cheeky, and Downright Freaky with Matthew Harris. He's taking a closer look at some of the wonderfully weird, gloriously geeky, and freaky things in our world.
My name is Kevin. I haven't been out since 2012, and I am COVID-free.
Looking for love during a health pandemic? Try COVID Connections, a new dating app for a new normal.
We're looking for that lucky third.
For safety's sake, we think we should wear masks when we're together, but no condoms.
Find your connection on Instagram at COVID_connections_.
Good evening or morning or afternoon, everyone, as the case may be. It is evening right now here in the home office in Texas, and it's Wednesday night, and we've got another live show. Now, I am expecting a guest in here momentarily. Hopefully, Pastor Luke Stone is going to join me again tonight. I'm just waiting for him to show up, but we are going to discuss, a couple of weeks ago, I had the pastor on, and we discussed Mandela Effects, changes to the Bible. And he had some interesting takes on some of those various changes. But this week, I wanted to have him back so that we could discuss some of the better known Mandela effects. He's one of the few people that I've met that actually experienced the Mandela funeral the same way that I did. And then he's experienced a couple other things that I kind of hit him with while he was on the air with me that he was unaware of, like Louis Anderson being alive. He was under the impression that he was dead. And there was a couple of more. So I want to have him back on so that we can discuss some of those other changes, the famous Mandela effects. But while we're waiting on him, I can announce that as of next week, Geeky, Cheeky, and Downright Freaky will be moving to 6 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Eastern, so an hour earlier. And the reason for that is as we announced a couple of weeks ago that our Geek Speak had gone syndicated on Indie Volt Radio on Monday nights around the world. This show will now be syndicated on Indie Volt on Wednesday nights as well. So that means a lot more people are going to be listening to the show. And so we're going to move it back an hour. But that also means that I can go longer than an hour if need be. Now, of course, that just depends on if I've got enough to talk about. But if we have a special guest on or something, that means that I can go for longer than the hour. And but that will be as of next week. Now, it doesn't change anything on where you tune in at. You can still tune in on YouTube, on my Facebook, Geek Insider's YouTube and Facebook, and all the same places wherever you've been tuning in already. But you can also tune in on Indie Volt Radio. And I'll let you all know, I believe that's going to be available on Roku as well, but I'm not sure how long after the show that it's going to be on the Roku channel. So big things for Geek Insider as a whole, and for this show, and for Meredith and my show, the Geek Speak. And I've got a few things loaded up here to talk with Luke about. Let me just check and see. It looks like he might be on the way. Not sure yet. Swiper, stop. I left one dog in here and he decides to make all the noise. And in case you all missed it, here in, let's see, this coming Monday, we're having Christian Basil on, if I can get my tongue untied. Christian Basil from The Legend of the Traveling TARDIS radio. God almighty, The Legend of the Traveling TARDIS, a Doctor Who radio show. There we go. I hadn't even started drinking yet. But he will be on Monday night, and then we will announce who's coming the next week after that, because it may be a very special guest. And there is Pastor Luke Stone.
Had a little bit of internet trouble.
That's what it is. I was just sitting there tap dancing until you made it on.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Showing off those moves.
If meetings go late, kids, with all of us working from home, or so many of us working from home, kiddos interruptus is a whole new thing these days.
It really is. It really is. Yeah.
But welcome back to the show. I told everybody that I was going to having you back on tonight so that we could discuss some regular Mandela effects. But for those that didn't catch your last appearance, tell everyone who you are and why we're speaking tonight.
All right. Well, my name is Luke Stone. I am a pastor in Jacksonville, Florida. So I've been in ministry for a long time. I've been doing it since I was about 18 years old as a lay leader, and then about 5 years ago, I took a role as lead pastor after transitioning from youth and music. I also make a comic book, so I work in the comic book industry, the independent, obviously. And so I draw and write a book. Actually, the picture's behind me there is one of my books, Hybrids, the Sons of Gods. I'm the artist with another book called Voodoo Nations. And I'm the editor-in-chief at a little company called TERRAFORM Comics, which is working hard to try to change the landscape of comics. So that is me in a brief little nutshell.
And we did initially meet over comics for the Geek Speak show and for the Indie Volt, or not Indie Volt, the Indie event. But then we got to talking about Bible changes, and so we discussed that a couple of weeks ago. But as we've been discussing the Mandela Effect, I hit you with a couple. I was just telling everyone that how you thought you were under the same impression that Louis Anderson was dead and gone, and he's not. And you'd experienced the Nelson Mandela funeral back in the day. But there are some that I haven't discussed with you that I wanted to get to see if you knew about them. But after the show last week, you and I got to talking, and you had some interesting theories on what could be the cause of the Mandela effect. And I definitely want to get to that. But first, I want to just kind of have a little fun with seeing if I'm going to stump you or if you're affected by these. Some of them you may well be familiar with, because a lot of these none of this is groundbreaking. I'm not bringing any new Mandela effects to the table. This is stuff that people have reported for a long time, but it doesn't mean that everybody has experienced them. Are you you're a geek, a certifiable geek, as well as a pastor?
Oh yeah.
I take it you're a Star Wars fan as well, right?
I do love Star Wars.
All right. And so in the first one, or excuse me, Empire Strikes Back, what does Darth Vader say to Luke to reveal his heritage?
No, I am your father.
All right. Yeah, that is what he says. But the famous Mandela effect is that
and I've heard this my whole freaking life because my name is Luke. By the way, my mom and dad's first date was to go see Star Wars in 1970, late, whatever. Yeah, I was born in 1980, and so they went on a date to go see that. When they finally birthed me, my dad wanted to name me after him and my grandfather, but my mom really liked the name Luke from the movie, so she wanted to name me Luke. So. My grandfather's name was Luther, so I got named Luther with a nickname of Luke.
Gotcha.
And so, so my whole life I've heard, Luke, I am your father. And I'm like,
Now, see, but
that's not even the line.
But let's check this out.
When I first saw the dialogue that said, Luke, I am your father, I said to myself, he's lying.
See, even James
Earl Jones got it wrong.
Right. He remembers the Mandela effect, that it is Luke, I am your father. And of course, there is the pop culture influence on this. We can all name, I think it's Tommy Boy, where what's his name? Chris, I can't remember his daggum name now. Chris Farley, where he talks into the fan and he says, Luke, I am your father. And so that's nothing new, but folks, just in case this one is new to you, this is actually the line here.
Father, he told me enough. He told me you killed him. No, I am your father.
And that is it. It is no, I am your father. I too quoted it wrong for many, many years. And if you would have asked me a couple of years ago before I found out about the Mandela effect, I definitely would have said, Luke, I am your father, even though I'd seen the movie probably a dozen times at that point and have seen it way more since then. But yeah, that is, like I said, it's one of the famous ones. But what do you remember about the Lindbergh baby? Let's try that one. What is your recollection?
The Lindbergh baby was kidnapped
Okay.
And didn't they find the baby dead?
Yes, they did. But the whole Mandela effect of it is, and there was even somebody executed for the kidnapping and death of the baby. But the whole Mandela effect is that people, and I remember this as well. I remember in Unsolved Mysteries where they talked about the Lindbergh kidnapping mystery. Well, let's just take a look at this.
All right, I admit it. I am the Lindbergh baby. Wah, wah, goo.
And then there's this.
Maybe it's time for Stewie to start potty training.
Isn't he a little young for that? You know what happened to the Lindbergh baby?
Charles, he's only 6 months old.
Honey, would you relax? God, I flew across the Atlantic by myself. I'm a national treasure, for God's sake. I think I know how to... Ah! Oh, God! Oh, God! All right. He was kidnapped. You call the police. I'll write the ransom note.
What about Amelia? She saw everything.
You leave her to me.
Oh, you leave her to me.
Right, exactly. But it's those kind of things that go along with, people call it residue in the Mandela Effect community, because they have those strong memories of the Lindbergh baby kidnapping never being solved. No one was definitely ever arrested for it. But now the current history is that they found the baby not even 2 weeks later, dead, and then they found a man, convicted him of it, and executed him. But that is another Mandela effect. So far, I'm 0 for 2, man. You're remembering the non-Mandela effect of these things.
Okay.
Let's try this one. I know I'm going to get you with one.
All right, try me. Try me.
All right. So, what day of the month is Thanksgiving on?
It changes. It's the third Thursday of the month. Of
right,
November.
Well, yeah. So that's what the Mandela effect is. People remember it always being the third Thursday, when in fact it never has been the third Thursday. It is the fourth Thursday of the month.
Oh, is it like that? Oh, the last Thursday of the month, or what is it?
No,
I don't know how that works out.
No,
I thought it was always the third Thursday.
I remember learning that in school and being shocked as hell last year when somebody's like, nope, it's the fourth. And I went and looked, and I go back and look at old calendars, and I'm like, you mother crazy. But yeah, it's always been the fourth Thursday, but a lot of people in the community remember it as being the third. All right, so we're 2 for 1.
Right.
Let's see here. I got a big one, but I'm saving that for in a minute. Okay, Al Capone. You remember Al Capone, Scarface?
Yeah,
what do you recall about his death?
Al Capone died in prison.
You remember what from?
I believe he was stabbed by someone.
Okay. Well,
I watch a lot of history shows, so I'm trying to remember how he was. He had a cell that was all made up like with all kinds of like luxury items. Did you know that?
Oh yeah.
So it was like really cool. But I believe he got stabbed. Like someone sent somebody in to kill him, or paid someone in there to kill him because he was about ready to like start singing. He was going to sing like a bird, and so yeah, someone stabbed him.
Gotcha. Well, then you'll be very interested to know that Capone actually went crazy due to syphilis. He was released from prison, and he died at home surrounded by his family. He had a stroke and pneumonia. And
I did hear that he went crazy from syphilis. I didn't know that.
Now, I'd always known that's what I thought. He went crazy in prison. He was being haunted by people that he'd killed, but that he died in Alcatraz. But no, and I've even talked to someone, I wish I could find it. It was on an old Reddit thread, to where they said they went to Alcatraz it may not have been Alcatraz, but they went to a prison that had Al Capone's cell in there, and it even had his death listed at the prison. And somebody was like, well, he was paroled, so he was still property of the prison. But it just didn't make sense because they said he died in the prison. But all right, so we're 50-50. 2 that you were spot on, and 2 that you remember the Mandela effect. Now, here's another historical one. Do you recall it? What do you? Oh wait, I'm getting yelled at here. Yep, it's break time. Real quick, let me do a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Mandela Effects, seeing what the pastor remembers, and then we are going to discuss because he has experienced several of the bigger ones. We're going to discuss what his feelings are on what could be the cause of the Mandela Effect. So stick around, everybody. We will be right back as soon as I can find the right bump. There it is.
Check it out. MobileEdge.com has award-winning products with innovative features and contemporary, edgy designs that empower you to look sharp and travel smart with your mobile tech. Your beloved, not to mention expensive gaming gear and mobile tech devices are an extension of you, so give them the protection and style they deserve wherever you go. Find them at MobileEdge.com and protect your tech with Mobile Edge. Bring it on. Hey Geek Insiders, Mobile Edge has a special coupon code for our dedicated listeners. Get 25% off your Mobile Edge gear using coupon code GEEK25. That's GEEK25. Geek out.
All right, and so the next one I wanted to discuss is again from history, but it's something that a lot of people have pretty strong memories of, and that's, what do you remember about the one and only Adolf Hitler? What facial characteristics do you remember about him?
Well, considering he died before I was born, I do believe he was
born
short.
Too, man.
Yeah, he was short, and he had dark hair and brown eyes, which was not non-characteristic of the Aryan nation that he supposed was supposed to be so great. But he had a little Hitler mustache.
Right now, on the mustache, do you remember how wide do you remember it being?
Not real wide. I mean, they always joke that it was like just about the width of his nose.
Okay.
And that's through pop culture. We've seen that, I don't know, 100 times or whatever. They just did that something about a bunny. What was that? It was the comedy about Hitler, which if that could ever be a thing.
You're right.
Yeah.
And well, you're right and you're wrong.
Jojo Rabbit. Jojo Rabbit. Yeah.
And I've got that marked to watch, but I hadn't watched it yet.
It's pretty funny.
Is it? So I'll have to check it out. Well, Hitler, the thing about the mustache, that's just something my wife and I have noticed, and that is that it just seemed wider and bushier than what we remembered. But the big Mandela effect is, and you are right there with us all, that we remember the brown hair and brown eyes. Well, in this current version of history, Mr. Hitler had very, very blue eyes. They were not dark. And it's not photo manipulation. If any color photo you find of Hitler, he has blue eyes, which I remember the same thing that you did, that was a ding against his Aryan heritage.
Yeah, it's very possible because a lot of the black and white photos that someone just said, yeah, he had brown eye, so it's possible that happened. But yeah, I was always told that he had brown hair, brown eyes, a ding against the Aryan nation. Yeah.
Now it could also be that the color photos that are available out there, that someone has colorized them wrong. I mean, we see colorized, movies get colorized, but that is, of course, one that people point out all the time, is that did have blue eyes or the brown eyes, like what we were taught. Now, the next one that we're going to discuss, this is my biggest one. It is for a lot of people, but it's also been talked about a lot. So chances are you may already know the Mandela effect on this one. But what do you recall about Ed McMahon from The Tonight Show and who he was a pitch man for various commercials?
I don't remember. I remember Ed McMahon.
Okay.
And I remember were there some like AARP commercials back in the day, or like something like that, some insurance company that he pitched for.
Yeah, there was an insurance company, but you don't remember like God, I don't want to say the name. A sweepstakes. He was the pitch man.
Oh yeah, the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes, wasn't it? Like,
yeah, and that's what everybody remembers, is that he worked for Publishers Clearinghouse, and that he would go to people's houses and award them big giant checks, and, surprise them, the winners, and say, here's your big prize.
I do recall that. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is that he never worked for God Almighty, I'm getting the right name stuck on my head, for Publishers Clearinghouse. He worked for American Family Publishers, which to me is a huge thing, because he did it for like over 20 years. And so you would think that company would be at the top of every worst advertising campaign list ever, because for all that time, everyone mistook him as working for their one and only competitor, the Publishers Clearinghouse. And it was so prevalent that even Ed himself gets it wrong, and a lot of his closest friends. Let's take a look at a couple here real quick.
Our next guest is one of the members of the cast of the television program over there.
I have to apologize. I thought this was the Joe Franklin studio. I'll tell you why I'm here. I happen to be in town over doing some stuff for the NBC affiliate.
That's right.
And, Ed McMahon, our good friend, could not be here. Yeah. But it seems, David, that you are the $1 million winner.
Oh, my God! I've won $1 million.
Says Publishers Clearinghouse on there.
Exactly. And that is one of the things that I point out. And I did a big, long, 2-parter extensive article on this last year, I believe it was. And I go in, man, I have found books where people quote it. And what's sad is even when he died, a mass quantities of his obituary in mainstream media all said that he was the spokesman for years for Publishers Clearinghouse. And I don't have it loaded, but I did have a commercial of him. It's him and Dick Clark, and it is clearly American Family Publishers. It's nowhere was he ever the pitch man. And that, I can kind of get the whole, he worked for a different company. It'd be easy. This AFP, they just were stupid and let everybody think it was Publishers Clearinghouse. But the second half of that is that mass quantities of people remember that Ed went to folks' houses. He had these big giant checks. He surprised them. And
that was why Johnny Carson had the check.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, he never handed out big checks, and he never, according to Forbes magazine and his official historical timeline now, he never left the studio. But check this out. This is where I said Ed gets it wrong himself.
Shout out to my people. This is Ed McMahon, rolling slow through the suburbs in an unmarked van. I ran the strip in the 80s, brought big fat checks to the ladies. When I showed up at their door, they would start screaming like crazy. Raked it in hand over fist, was on the VIP list. I was a verbal gunslinger, and my shots never missed. But now the bills have come due, and my credit score's whacked. So I'm hitting up the winners to get my checks back. Hi, Ed McMahon. Remember I gave you that big check? I'd like to have that check back. I'm having some stuff would help a lot. Just a little bit.
Now, that kind of stuff, Ed had financial problems there at the end. It's well known. He had a claim bankruptcy. He was taking any job that he could, but he also in the beginning, he would correct people. He corrects them on David Letterman on who he worked for, or when Letterman came on to Johnny Carson, excuse me. But towards the end here, I mean, he's singing a whole rap song about this career that never happened. He was on Roseanne with a big giant check at her door on Halloween. He did the same on Sabrina the Teenage Witch. He's in a closet with a big check, I believe. Golden Girls has a joke where Rose answers the phone and they're saying that Ed McMahon wants to see her, that she's the winner of the Publishers Clearinghouse. And the list just goes on and on. And granted, I always take those with a grain of salt because those are writers. And of course they have editors, but they're still human and they could fall into the trap of confabulating different memories. But I specifically remember Ed's ugly face stamped on that envelope, Publishers Clearinghouse. And, so that, like I said, it's one of the biggest ones for me. And folks, if you're interested in that one and you haven't already seen it, if you go to geekinsider.com and just type in Ed McMahon, you'll see the two-parter. There's the video that's linked in there as well from the show that I did specifically on this. You'll see this material I showed tonight, as well as a lot more, showing that there's just so much out there in pop culture that like I said, they call it residue, they call it whatnot, but it's also ways that it could be affecting our memories of this, because we have been slammed with that stuff over decades and over decades. And I'm not saying that that's not a Mandela effect. Don't get me wrong. I still firmly believe Ed McMahon worked for Publishers Clearinghouse and he went to people's doors with big checks. But we're going to take one more quick break here. And then when we come back, we're going to stop talking about the specific effects. And we're going to talk about what Luke thinks that, some of his theories on what could be the cause of all of this. So y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Penelope, and I'm looking for my trophy husband. Where are you?
Looking for love during a health pandemic? Try COVID Connections, a new dating app for a new normal.
I am DTZ, down to Zoom. I was once abducted. I'm available anytime to chat or talk. Oh, good God. Not the toilet paper! Not the toilet paper!
Find your connection on Instagram at COVID_connections_.
This is the legend of the traveling TARDIS. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Also catch us on the HWWS Web TV YouTube channel. Subscribe today and become part of the legend.
All right.
Is that COVID Connections thing's real?
Yeah. Well, it is. It's a real Instagram. It's a couple of guys that I've met. They are just having fun with this. I don't know if you noticed that lady at the beginning of that one. She is from Supergirl. She played a character on Supergirl, and I didn't watch it. But
I don't watch a lot of TV.
Well, I do, where I used to. But anyway, yeah, there are a couple of guys that I came across, or they hooked me up with this or turned me onto this, and I laughed and I was like, I gotta have this. I gotta get with Meredith to find out the ratio or the aspect so it takes up the whole screen instead of splitting it and leaving my ugly face in half of it. So I gotta get, because they're supposed to send me a couple of more, but they're great guys. Guys, make sure you check it out. It's at COVID_connections_. And if you got ideas for different little ones like that, shoot it over to them. They're a couple of great guys. But anyway, so Luke, we went over a couple of the more famous Mandela effects. Like I said, you remember the Nelson Mandela funeral. You remember Louis Anderson dying, and those were my two big ones that sucked me down the rabbit hole. But what has been your experience with the Mandela effect? That's something that I've never asked you.
I am very confident in the Berenstein Bears. You know what that was. And I remember when I first heard that it was different, I was like, how could that be? I think I remember this correctly. But I have a couple of theories. And one of them is not as exciting as the other one. The first theory is that our brain fills in holes with some things, so like we remember things a little differently, but really it's the word of mouth. Because we didn't have a lot of regular media and we couldn't pull things up on Google and search and all that kind of stuff before. Like it was more word of mouth. And so as these news things went, and these things were communicated to people through newspapers, little local newspapers. And I don't know about you, but back in my hometown, and I'll put them on blast, the Kokomo Tribune. Okay. Not one time did I ever give a quote to that paper and they quoted it correctly. Not one time. 0 times.
Right.
And, whenever I would have to, like, anytime it's like, hey, can we get a quote from you? Like, sure. Yeah. Are you going to write it down? It was never correct. And no one I ever knew was ever quoted right. So this newspaper just printed, I don't know, whatever the heck they wanted to, And so if you think about like the news being channeled down through these smaller venues like that, things get so messed up and so twisted that what we learned as a kid and just kept get parroted back to us and then through conversation. And that's how information was, it's kind of like that, the whisper game, the telephone game that you play as a kid. Somebody whispers something in the ear and by the end, it's a completely different message. I think that's part of what causes the Mandela effect. It's not nearly as exciting or sinister, I think, as some of us might want to think. But I do have another theory that some of these things where, we clearly, things were clearly communicated to us. It makes me almost wonder if there hasn't been, dare I say it for the listeners, fake news for a long time, where en masse they were trying to communicate to us something, right? And then they wanted to change that. So basically it was and I think it's an experiment. Here's what I think I think it's an experiment in gaslighting. I think that they want to find out how easily the masses can be controlled in their thoughts, and who's going to fight these things, So like, hey, and I think they've been doing it for a long time. Let's report this. Let's tell everybody this. Okay, now let's change it. Let's do it. Let's say it different, the Lindbergh baby was never found. Oh, now that the Lindbergh baby was found,
right. But then why, I definitely see where you're coming from on this, and I agree that could explain a lot of the various Mandela effects. But like you yourself have admitted that you remember seeing the Mandela funeral on TV, learning that that's when Mandela died. And then a couple of years later, being surprised when he's walking out of prison. And so how are they, able that some people just remember he was in prison, he got out, he became the president. And many other of us remember that he died, then all of a sudden he's out and becomes president.
Again, I think the funeral wasn't real.
So you think that they put it on TV and
you got to remember he was being overthrown, right? Like they put him in prison. They didn't, his government. It was all messed up.
He was an activist and got thrown in prison, and then he got out at the fall of apartheid or after the fall of apartheid, and then he went on to become president. Yeah. But there was even somebody had pointed it out, and I think I have it in an article somewhere, where there was actually a book from South Africa that somebody in there talked about Mandela dying in '89, and it was still in print. I do believe, though, that it was pointed out that was like from students that had written some stuff, and so it wasn't like it was peer reviewed or went through editors and all of that. But it was just more interesting, quote unquote evidence that more people remember the Mandela funeral. And so for something like, because I vividly have memories of the funeral and of them talking about it. And so, and then I grew up in Texas. And so they would have had to selectively shown the funeral in different areas, and some people not see it and some people see it. And it just, it'd be great
some households don't watch the news as carefully as others. Like if if someone tells me something happened on the news today, like, hey, this is what was reported on the news this evening, I would have to take your word for it because I don't get my news from television. Right. I get my news from websites and a different group of websites, because I'm one of those firm believers. I don't believe that what the media is trying to tell you right now about things is accurate. Like I go out and look for myself. Like, let's look at the cell phone videos and let's look at those kind of things. And so, back in the 80s, my mom loved watching the news, and she would watch trial TV and stuff like that. And so I remember when the OJ trial came on, man, that thing was on 24/7 in our house, and so some houses were really big into the news. Some of them weren't. So I think, maybe that could be the case. And there's still like this gaslighting thing that's going on. It's like, yeah, we reported that, but no, we didn't. Like they put these things on or whatever. Maybe they wanted us to think that Mandela was dead, to kill the revolution, kill the activism, because you kill the figurehead, things like that. That was probably the hardest one for me because I remember him being dead. I remember that funeral. I remember that happening. And some people don't, but I mean, I was 9 years old. I remember. I remember that happening.
And I was about 18, 19, somewhere right in there. And I just remember, I was right at 19, and I just remember it vividly. But, when we were talking the other day, I brought up the fact that I believed that because what is it? Amos, can't remember off the top of my head, where it talks about that the word of the Lord there will be a drought of the word of the Lord. Yes. And with the Bible changes happening, that could possibly, that a lot of people think that could be a part of it. And I've often wondered if the Mandela effect couldn't be Lucifer himself trying to push people away from faith. Because once you see that reality isn't, like Einstein says, reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. Once you kind of get that in your head, that things are able to change in front of you and that reality isn't what we thought it was. I mean, look at the double slit experiment. Freaking atoms think, or neutrons think. They know when they're being watched. And so that kind of stuff, it can start pushing you away from religion. Just like big government's been worried for years that if the general populace found out aliens existed, that it would kill religion. And so I just have always had that in my thoughts that could be a part of it. And I was thinking that you had an interesting take on that as well when we talked last.
Yeah, remind me exactly what your thought was, and then that'll kind of spark.
Well, it's just the Bible changes for one. It makes people question,
the verse. It was Amos. What was it?
Hang on, I'd have to find my notes, and I don't even think if I still have them up real quick.
Yeah, I was talking about in the end days that
there'll be a drought. That people will seek the word. So I don't want to.
I want to get it right. Let's not create our own Mandela effect.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Oddly enough, that could be that could be part of the cause of the Mandela effect. It's just misremembering or, things like that. And they're like, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that's how that was. And then it wasn't at all. But you said it was an Amos, right?
Yep, I do believe so. I'm 99% sure. 8:11. I do believe. Yeah. The days are coming when I will send a famine through the land, not a famine of food or a thirst for water, but a famine of hearing the words of the Lord.
Yeah. My theory was on that is, here's how I look at that we've been living in this already, and we haven't been hearing the word of the Lord. We haven't been receiving it. And now when we go back and we try to think about it, We've had people that have been preaching or teaching things that have been askew for a long time. And because we haven't tested it, we haven't taken what has been fed to us and verified that it's good or accurate. We just kind of take it for what it is. We just assume that the preacher's saying the right thing. We just assume that the meme has the right verse. I remember this one time particularly last year when someone had quoted a verse and put it on a meme, and it's up on the screen. And I'm like, that's not the verse. That wasn't the verse at all. It wasn't even the words of the verse. It was not at all the verse reference. The reference they gave, it didn't say those words. But people take that as gospel. See, people get their news, their theology, their understanding of the world through 145 characters at a time, through tweets and memes. And we see these people that are just so complacent that they're just accepting whatever's fed to them. But we're seeing it not just in the church. And so it's been happening in the church for a while. And I think that's where the famine of hearing the word of God is at. They're not just not going and listening to it. What's happening is they go and they participate, but they don't listen. Now we've get people where they don't go at all. They don't even, right now, the statistic is 1/3 of all believers that went to church prior to COVID-19 are no longer attending either online or in person. So 1/3 of all believers have stopped attending any kind of faith gathering whatsoever. Right. And so I do believe you're right. The devil's working that in there so that people don't have the understanding. But let's also look in our own culture right now. There's a lot that's being fed to us, spoon-fed to us. Like, hey, this is good. This is bad. Bad man, good man. This happens, that, And if you start to look at the evidence yourself and you start to ask questions and raise concerns, then you're squelched. You're right. Labeled. You're shut up. You're silenced. We don't want to hear you. We can't trust you because of X, Y, and Z. Right. And so we get this kind of, and then we also have people, they just don't care to do the research. Like, look into it. Check into it. Do more than a Google search. Read a book. Yeah. Find out, what does it really say? Again, you're going to find those references where, hey, Mandela was dead. So obviously, at some point, it was reported to somebody that Mandela had died in 1989. Why are people writing about it? Why do people believe that? Right. And just because we remember that, and you want to forget, you want to rewrite that history, we lied, at least say we lied about it, But here's the problem: if the news media says, "Oh, well, this government lied about it and faked it," and then we reported on it like it was news, we didn't verify it for you. Now they're the bad guys, so they can't admit any fault here. They can't say that they've reported something that's inaccurate. Think about the Russian dossier, right? I don't know if you're for Trump or against Trump, but let's just use some facts here, okay? They reported on a Russian dossier about our sitting president. And it came out that dossier was fake, created by a guy who was in his own party. Did they ever retract that?
No. Of course not.
No. Did they ever say, hey, we didn't? So now in the annals of history, what's going to happen is people are going to be like, oh, yeah, well, there was this Russian dossier about the 45th president. Yeah, but it was fake. Well, the news didn't say it was fake. Well, of course, they can't say it's fake because they reported it like it was real. If they say, oh, it was fake, then you can't trust the other stuff that they say. And it is so paramount that the mainstream media and that these leaders have your 100% trust, that you don't question anything. And they fear that. They fear that.
And I definitely see where you can come from on that one as well. And it could explain quite a few of them. I want to continue on that thought, and then I want to touch on something Carl just said here in just a minute. But let's take one more quick break, folks, and then we will continue on with Pastor Luke Stone.
For Geek Insider advertising opportunities, contact advertising@geekinsider.com. We offer space on the website, in the daily newsletter, sponsored posts, and advertising space on our podcasts. For details, contact advertising@geekinsider.com. That's advertising@geekinsider.com.
Oh, and I guess that wasn't the one I was supposed to play. Oh, no. Oh, there it is. Hang on, let's play this one.
At Geek Insider, we foster relationships with those in the geek sphere so we can give our audience the insider view of entertainment, tech, and more.
Now, see, I needed to play that one, Meredith, because you did not show that one to me yet. So, yes, I needed to see it. But now I want to go to Carl's comment here in just a second. But with the news kind of reporting thing, let me ask you this. What do you recall about the Tiananmen Square incident and the man known as Tank Man? Do you remember anything about that?
Not much. Not much, really, to be honest.
Because the famous Mandela Effect is of course in Tiananmen Square. Was it 41 years ago now? There was the mass protest. Tanks came through the square and stopped it. Okay, do you remember what happened to him?
No. All I know is the picture. Yeah.
All right. Well, the prevailing theory was, or not theory, the memory was, and I recall this vividly. The tank ran him over, squished him. It was live on TV. It was talked about in my high school, or in my school, and he was smushed. Well, and this was, I don't want to say the year because I'll get it wrong, but anyway, now friends come up and take him away. He climbs up on top of the tank. Friends come up and take him away. And whereas you were discussing, the news, putting things out and then covering it up, this is one of those where you would think that we would want to make sure that the real story stayed out because it showed the brutality of the communist regime. And for Tank Man not to have been run over and friends to pull him away, it just takes so much away from that memory of Tiananmen Square. That was what always stood out in my mind was Tank Man. He got smooshed. There was live on TV. That was one of the first things outside of a movie that I'd ever seen like that, because it was like on ABC News, Nightly News or whatever, they were showing it. And they even did the little warning beforehand, parents. And then to come to find out, it's not that stuff didn't happen at all. There are lots of people that got run over by tanks, but it didn't happen to Tank Man, and his identity was never found out. As far as we know, he grew old. But I do believe that you're onto something, like Carl was saying a minute ago, where he said, I've heard ministers say things or even read them, but that was their interpretation. And when I read them later in the King James Version, the minister was either wrong or added their own spin. And of course, as we discussed, ministers do that. Journalists do that. They put their own spin on it.
And I agree with Carl. Let me just also clarify just a little bit. Just because that what they're saying doesn't match up with the King James doesn't mean that it's incorrect. Because in the King James, when they translated that particular Bible, their vocabulary was fairly limited. And so for just a quick example, we know that in Scripture there's 5 types of love, right? And but we only have one word for love, and that one word love can mean a few different things. Like, oh, I love you, man. You're my brother. I love my kids. I'm like I'm father. I have unconditional love, or I have romantic love. There's all these different kinds of love, but we use the same word love.
I love pecan pie.
Yeah, exactly. The same love I have for pecan pie is not the same kind of love I have for my kids. It's a different level and different kind of love, And unfortunately, we're limited by that. And even right now in our own language, we don't have a specific word for those types of love. We have to add qualifiers to that word love, in order to truly explain what we mean by that love. Now, in in the Hebrew, they have 5 different words that mean love, but they mean 5 different types of love. And so when we look at that in those translations, different, and it's very important to find the right and find an accurate version of a translation of the Bible to study from. They could be using a translation of the Bible that may have different words than what you have in your King James, but may expound upon that more accurately to what the writer was saying. They may not be using their own words, and they may not be using their own opinions. They may be just having expounded upon what that says. And your interpretation of the limited King James Version Bible doesn't necessarily necessarily match up with what you this other version expounds upon it to be, for which I think is why a lot of people like preaching from the King James, because there's a lot of room for interpretation. I particularly like to use a version called the ESV, the English Standard Version, that leaves very little room for interpretation. I don't want to have to figure out what it says for the most part. I want to know what it says. That way I can accurately communicate it to my congregation. And so that's important. But having said that, there are tons of people out there who do want to make the Bible say what they want it to say. They don't really want to hear what it has to say. They don't really want to know what the author's intent was, how the audience would have received it. They don't want to know that. They want the Bible to become a witness to their own thoughts and values, rather than them becoming the witness to the Bible's values that it teaches, from Jesus. So there are people that twist the words, and what I do, I say they preach from second opinions. Gotcha. And so there is that happens on the regular, and it is so important that you read the Bible for yourself, that you do look into what the actual Bible says, and that you don't just take their word for it, but at the same time, you don't just take your gut feeling for it. That you're just like, well, I think it means this. One of the worst things I've ever heard Bible study was, well, how does that make you feel? We're not talking about feelings here. We're talking about facts. Like what does the Bible say? Because sometimes those facts do lead to feelings, and those feelings need to be addressed. But just trying to read one verse out of a large Bible, out of reading one sentence from one paragraph from one chapter out of 24 chapters, you're not really going to get a sense of what that one sentence is really supposed to be. You can take anything that is said and take it out of context in that sense. So you have to be really careful with that. But that's what also happens in our news media. They take one soundbite out of context, and then we think that's the truth. We don't listen to the whole piece.
And it's not only the news media, that happens even more so on social media. And before you know it, something has gone viral. And it's not even the case. And now, of course, you got the deep fakes, and to where it can make somebody look like they're even saying that. And then that goes viral, even though it's marked as manipulated media. People are still going, oh my God, look, well, this is something that such and such would say. It's just crazy. But, I want to kind of just wrap here with a couple of things. But so in your opinion, the Mandela Effect, for the most part, is going to be explained away either with just confabulation, misremembering, or just crap being passed down from person to person. You don't really think that there's anything supernatural or just unexplained about the event. Is that what you say?
Probably. The skeptic in me says that.
Right.
The skeptic in me says that. And I think that a lot of those things can be boiled down to that. There are some things that are far beyond that, and I believe there's something more sinister or more supernatural involved. But yeah, I think for the most part, it was either taught, recorded, or remembered wrong. And then we get so tied into our convictions about it that, it had to be that. It had to be that. And yeah, maybe it was, but.
Well, and that's a good place to stop on the Mandela Effect part. We've only got a few minutes left, Luke, and I want to give you a chance to give us an update on where Hybrids is. Tell people what Hybrids is and how they can back it, and how much time they got left, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, Hybrids has, and here I can share my screen. I think I've still got 16 days. Always have to refresh it. It's always up. I've got 15 days now. I'm literally at the halfway mark. And so I'll just share my screen real fast so everyone can see it. And that's the one I want right there. So yeah, we've got 15 days left. We're just halfway through, a little over halfway. We're 53% funded to our $5,000 goal. Just today, I've added some special perks to this thing. You can now get the both special covers. So if you want the holofoil cover and you want the Canaan White cover, which is exclusive to Indiegogo, you can get that for $60. That's about a $15 discount on that. You can also get the Hybrids issue 1 standard. So if you just want to like get in the ground level and try to find out more about it, you don't necessarily want to invest so much on the whole story. There is the ability to do that. And I will be shipping out the PDF immediately so that you can get a good read on that. And if you decide, so in case you decide you want to go ahead and grab the whole book. If you just want to fuel the madness and put a little Joe in Luke's tank so that he can keep drawing and writing, then we have an option for that. You got the buy Luke a cup of Joe. It's just a $5 donation to the cause and it'll help us get to where we're going. Then we've also got the cover A for the book. We've got the floppies now, but also today I added this really cool the Hybrids 1 through 5 connected covers. So I don't know if we can see. No, it's gonna ask me to buy it. I can't do that. So I don't have a bigger picture of it, but you can go in there and check that out. It's it's this panoramic picture that all 5 covers put together make one big panoramic picture. And so we have that available for $25 also as an add-on. So if you want to get those, and then I'll pop down here because what I really just want to show off is I've got some original art. So I've got 2 original art options that you can back in on, and you get your choice of cover and then the original art with that. So that's some cool things you can do. So definitely help check that out, spread the word, let people know about it. What we deal with here a lot in this book is really kind of the ancient aliens and the Nephilim and all of those weird kind of conspiracy things. So the part of my brain that doesn't want to just be like, maybe we remembered it wrong, maybe, the other part of my brain that wants to be like, it's all a conspiracy. That's the part of me that is writing this book. So it is a fun book, and everything is a conspiracy. So,
and there's the QR code, folks. If you don't want to go to Indiegogo and look up Hybrids, you can just scan this right in. It'll take you over there. And I got to ask you, Luke, did you happen to see, Meredith brought this to my attention, did you see the Kickstarter that Keanu Reeves kicked off?
I did, man. Whoa, he is killing it today.
God, it is crazy. They weren't expecting this, I know, because they had a $50,000 goal. They hit that within the first hour. Last I looked, they were at $350,000. And, people were going, hey, wait a minute. There were some questions, and I just don't think they expected it to be that popular. But the point is, folks, is that I wanted to get to is, like he just said a second ago, if you can't participate and can't back this at this time, then just share it out there to your friends, share it on your social media. This is going to be one of those comics, man, that if you are a reader, you like to read comics, you like the great artwork, this is going to be one of those ones that you want to get your hands on. But Luke, I definitely want to thank you again. And if folks want to tune into your church, tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, you can go to bridgescommunitychurch.com or find us on Facebook at Bridges Community Church. We have our YouTube linked up and everything, and we go live every Sunday right there from our little sanctuary with our little congregation. 10 a.m. Eastern is usually when we go live. So yeah, we have and again, I preach the word. I dig into it and no frills, no fluff. Just this is what it says, and we deal with those things. No opinions. I try not to preach my opinion. If you want my opinion, read my book. I've got plenty of opinions in there, but they're usually fun and somewhat zany. But yeah, so that's the case. You can find me there.
All right. Well, great. Well, thanks so much for joining us again this week, Luke. We definitely appreciate it and enjoyed it. Ladies and gentlemen, just remember next week we are going to be back an hour. We are going to be at 6 o'clock Central, 7 Eastern, because I will be live on the Indie Volt Radio Network starting next week with this show. So we're going to have tens of thousands of listeners joining in. I'm going to have to hook some stuff up so that they can get some questions in going forward. We probably won't have any for next week. But, it's kind of hard to do a chat with folks that are listening in on the radio. So we're going to set something up to where they can send in questions beforehand. I got some cool guests that I'm trying to get lined up over the next few weeks. So just make sure you tune in an hour earlier next week, and I'll see you then, folks. Good night.
People still falling from the tree, to all my broken lovers still learning how to breathe. Y'all need someone to sing with, yeah, you can sing with me. Can I get an amen? Amen. You never know what they don't dance. Take me to your leader, baby. Yeah, don't worry about me, mother. Don't worry about me, brother. Don't worry about me. Y'all don't need to understand me.